Hello, and welcome to Research 101, a new webinar series where we'll take a ride down the how-to highway with subject matter experts to learn tips and tricks that will help take your research farther and faster. Today, Beth Keithley, Faculty Grant and Distinguished Fellowship Advisor with the Office of Graduate Education, and Emily Lacy, Associate Director, Office of Sponsored Programs Administration, will demo how to use Pivot and speak to corporate and foundation relations as a source of funding. As we move through today's session, please post your questions at any time to the Q&A chat for us to address. Beth, please take it away.
All right, I will. Thank you so much. I am very excited to talk about Pivot. If you have not been for a while, I want to point out that it is new and changed and actually in many ways much better. So this is a funding database that the University of Texas at Dallas has a subscription for, which means using your NetID and password, you can sign up for a free account that I will show you how to claim your profile and do some searches that you can save so that once you have set yourself up on Pivot with those things, you don't really have to go back all that often. So let's play. One of the things I do want to say before I get too far into it is I'm not going to do a search the way that a normal person would, because I'm showing you some of the features. So anytime you think I wouldn't go that deep in, or I would hit advanced search right at the beginning and then move forward, absolutely do the search the way you do your search. I'm just trying to give you an idea of everything that Pivot can do. So this is the homepage from Pivot. I actually have an account. So let me just sign out real quick. You can sign in or create an account. UTD has shibboleth, so you can use your UTD ID and password to do it. Just when I try to do it, the system gets angry. So I'm going to just move on. This is your home page. Once you have signed up for an account, you should claim your profile, which can be done here, your profile, or right here, your profile. The advantage to claiming your profile is that, one, Pivot has gotten access to UTD's websites, so your information as it appears on UTD websites is already loaded into the system, which means the system has probably already pulled some funding opportunities for you. I'm a staff member, so I don't have a very complicated profile, but it knows that I am an advisor, and as a result the system automatically pulls opportunities for me. And that's great. However, not everyone trusts the computer. So you can do your own searches. And I do recommend you let the profile build your own search, but then also have some different searches. Also, if there's searches that you're not interested to do, maybe necessarily with your research, but maybe there's a lab group that you're interested in finding some research for, or some educational outreach that's a little different, you can set up your own searches and save. I clicked on the advanced search just so that I can walk you through this process. So as you can see, if you go across the columns, it's or. If you go down the rows, it's and. You can narrow these down as much as you want. For those not familiar, the sponsor and the sponsor ID numbers are associated with Pivot. The CFDA number is a federal number. If you know them and want to use them, by all means do, but I recommend just keeping it at all fields. So you can put in anything you want here. You can see I've got some searches that I've done in the past. Pivot is a little old school in that they like quotation marks for phrases that you want the complete search of. If you don't want to put your own word here, you can go down to their keywords, and I will go back and talk about the rest of these. But one of the things I want to point out is, if you see what I've done, and it's probably hard to see, but I just typed in statistics here to see about the pivot keywords. And you can see I've got business statistics, engineering statistics, vital statistics, criminology, criminal statistics. So you can narrow as much as you want or keep the search as broad as you want. Completely up to you. I'm just going to go ahead and put statistics here. Again, I know it's broad, but I want you to see all the things that you get. I tend to recommend that unless you're buying a particular piece of equipment and must have basically X amount of money, or there's no point in having anything, to not put an amount in. But again, your search, your way, you can do it how you want. Deadlines. I usually, when I'm talking to graduate students, I tell students to give themselves at least 6 weeks into the future. Keep in mind, though, if you're going to save your search, which I recommend that you do, at some point that 6 weeks is going to catch up with the present. So again, up to you. I'm still going to do it just to show you how. So on or after, you grab the picture of the calendar, go into the future. Optional deadlines or continuous or undefined deadlines, I click them both. Foundations do often have continuous deadlines, so I just want to have all my options. A limited submission, that is something you would work with the Office of Research on. Emily is here, so she is the limited submission guru. But what that means is that the funder has limited how the university can submit, usually the number of applications at a particular time. I've never known why you would want to narrow your search down by limited submission, but it's nice to know it's an option. Activity location, citizenship. Now, as a faculty member, you are going to be, the university and academic institution is going to be applying for your behalf. But if you have students who are interested in fellowships and they want to do the activity in a location that they are not a resident, or that they're not a citizen, I recommend that they do go through and fill in these two things. Tons of funding types. So there's artistic pursuits, contracts and tender, collaborations, dissertation and thesis. So again, if you've got graduate students looking for funding, dissertation and thesis money is there. Under T, there's training or fellowship. For faculty, usually the interest is in research, but sometimes in publishing and sometimes in artistic pursuit. And that's one of the things, the good news is you can save multiple searches. So if you're interested in research, or maybe also a training program, and also a meeting or conference or seminar, you can do those 3 different searches and keep them separate. I'll show you what the email looks like in a minute, but the good news is you get one email with all the updates to your saved searches. So if you have 56 saved searches, you're not going to get 56 emails. You're going to get one with all of them in it. I do want to point out really quickly that meeting or conference or seminar is not travel to a meeting, conference, or seminar. It is to put on a meeting, conference, or seminar. So keep in mind what I've done at the moment is I've just got statistics and I've just got research. That is all I have done. Applicant type, a couple things real quick. You can apply as an individual. Early career or emerging in the field is you've got your PhD less than 5 years. A graduate student, most of the opportunities here are for PhD students, but there are some masters. So again, if you've got students who are looking, or you are a student yourself and are looking, please. Mid-career established in field. And then, as I mentioned earlier, academic institution. So that would be applying on behalf of UTD. Anything you want to include, so narrow your search down by these things, you can exclude here. So just for example, I'm going to say that I don't want, pick something at random. I don't want a prize or award. Now, I know I said research, but just in case, I don't want a prize or a reward, an award. And maybe what I want to do, since I didn't do a location up here, maybe what I want to say is I don't want funding from a non-US institution because they're probably not going to fund me doing the work in the United States. That's not 100% true across the board, but just for the sake of this demonstration. So I'm just going to hit search and see what I get. I have 54 results. Great. Now, depending on what I want to do, I can sort them by deadline soonest to latest. And then I can start narrowing down over here if I want to. So again, I think I showed you the keywords about, the different types of statistics. So I can see here, I'm interested in health and medicine. And I'm interested, it tells you how many you've got. So, it's, at some point, you're down to 2, but okay, I'm down to 2. That's what I want. The save search is here. If I wanted to, just a little trick, if I wanted to go back to advanced search and change everything, I need to hit refine search, not advanced search. If I hit advanced search, it's going to clear all this search information that is up here. So this search information up here, if you can kind of read the code, is basically what the search is at the moment. I can save this search right now, and I'm going to show you it. What is the name that you'd like for the search? I'm going to put, great, save it. And it will, I left that box checked about if I wanted an email. I'm going to take just a second away from Pivot to show you the email. This is the email I get. It looks like spam, so that's why I want to point it out. You can see it comes Sunday at 2:47 p.m. or 2:47 a.m., which is pretty normal. Always Sunday, always very early. And Pivot no reply, Pivot funding search for mine. It can look a little spammy if the first couple of times you get it. But you can see here are all my searches. I have a Department of Ed search, an EU grad student, and again, this is just because who I am and what I do. These are, what my interests are, but these are all my names, like vague institutional search. I know what I meant. And any of these you can click on. So frankly, I don't get on Pivot very often because I have these opportunities, I have these opportunities saved and they're coming to me. But back to the search, let's look at what we've got. So hey, call for proposals from the Isaac Newton Institute for Mathematical Science. Deadline's January, plenty of time. What I want to point out from here is that it says the proposal, the deadline is anticipated. What that means is that if I went to the website right now for the Isaac Newton Institute for Mathematical Sciences, the call for proposals deadline would not match this. But based on history, that is likely to be when it is due. So there's 2 types. There's anticipated and confirmed. But I know January seems like it's right around the corner, but I'm not really terribly surprised that a January option is still listed as anticipated. So here's the Pivot information. It is not enough information that you will be able to start an application, but it is enough information to decide whether it's worth clicking to the website and deciding, and reading the full solicitation. So most of this stuff is pretty self-explanatory. The website will take you to the website, the non-Pivot website about this opportunity. The sponsor, if you click on the sponsor name, you will get a Pivot list of all of the opportunities that the sponsor has in Pivot. The amount, a lot of times the amount is pretty vague because the solicitation is vague, but this is unusually vague. Applicant type, anything in red is, from my search where it hit. Now, because I left everything completely open, the activity location is in the United Kingdom, so I am not eligible, although I'm not eligible for this for a variety of reasons. But you can look and see here the deadlines. There's twice a year and some information about the keywords where this opportunity would have fallen. So if I had hit finite mathematics, I would have gotten this as well. And this is another thing. If as I am looking at opportunities, I think, oh, you know what, finite mathematics would have been a better keyword for me. I can just click it and it will happen for me. A couple of other things to point out here. If you track this opportunity, again, this is January, so maybe I'm not quite ready to start on it, or maybe I'm not entirely comfortable starting on an application that is anticipated rather than confirmed. If I go ahead and track it, what will happen is Pivot will send me an email when there are changes to the information. And I want to show you one of those emails too. This is one I track for the American Musicological Society. So I got this email, just a few days ago that is telling me what was updated and to just click to get the new information. But you can see one of the things is that the deadline has moved from anticipated to confirm. You don't often get a ton of time if you rely on Pivot tracking to give you the updated deadlines. You don't get this with this email. I got several months, but sometimes you only get a few weeks. But the tracking is good if you're as a way to just kind of keep the memories and sort of keep the searches of what you're interested in doing. I showed you the I am not a fan of see more opportunities like this. Pivot defines what those more opportunities are like. And as a result, I had 54 emails in the search before I started narrowing down. If I clicked see more ops like this, I'm going to get about thousands, literally thousands. And you can see they're all over the place. So again, your search, do it your way, but I am not a fan. Potential collaborators, these are people who in their profile from Pivot would have found this opportunity. So here is the whole list. You could narrow it down and just sort of see who it is. I don't think this is the best way to pick collaborators, but it's available to you. Certainly outside institution, if you needed a biostatistician for something and you just wanted to get a sense for who might be interested. But that's one of the other ways that Pivot uses the profiles. Funding contact person information is here. That can be very useful, especially I'll tell students all the time, if it looks like, if you've confirmed on the website that the deadline seems close enough that they should have decided or updated the solicitation, you can always email this person and say, saw on the website that it maybe is January, any update on that. That is the funding. I mean, there's a lot, but it is a searchable database. So it is a searchable database that does normal database things. I want to show you a few things with the profiles that are new to Pivot or relatively new to Pivot that I think are really good. They finally have profile proxies, which means if you have somebody, maybe a grad student, who you would like to have access to your profile so that they can see the opportunities as well, you can assign a proxy. You can also put together groups so that you can share an opportunity to the group. Let me show you how to share. I did not show you how to do that. I'm just going to go to my saved really quick. Share. So this is an opportunity. So maybe I knew somebody who was working on small business development of sepsis diagnostics and therapeutics. I can share it with them. The great news is if I wanted to share it with somebody who maybe was at a different campus, so I didn't know if they had Pivot or not, the link is still good for 2 weeks. So Pivot, it's a sales technique, obviously, but it is a way if you've got a collaborator at another institution, you can say, hey, take a look at this. This email also looks pretty spammy. So if you are sending it to somebody at a different institution who may not be familiar with Pivot, you are going to want to follow up with an email that says, I sent you this thing and it's real, but it is handy. So you can do groups so that you could have your entire lab developed in an organization that you could share opportunities with. I recommend Pivot. You know, Pivot has just an incredible number of funding options. Let's see if I can. Sometimes they have a graph. They're not going to show me the graph. That's okay. It has a huge number of opportunities from sponsors, especially foundations, that you may have never heard of. So as an option to really change up the variety of options, the variety of sources for your funding, Pivot is really just spot on fabulous. And if you didn't like playing with advanced search, you could have just typed in statistics here and gone. Right, 203, and you could have done just the same way with all the narrowing down and all the refinements. I'm sure you've seen, why hasn't she talked about conferences or awarded grants? And I will really quickly, with just the couple of minutes that I have left. The conferences are relatively new and the search is not as robust as the funding by any stretch of the imagination. So I always feel like I'm massively disappointing people when I kind of pull into this. The advanced search, which does exist, basically allows you to look up by country and keywords, and you can narrow down by submission deadlines but certainly if you were interested in conferences in your area and you weren't sure what was going on, or you were relatively new to the field, or you were interested in another discipline and weren't entirely sure what the conferences were, this is a good way. The awarded grants is also new. You, as you can see, can look by sponsor, and it gives you some ideas. There are other ways. NSF has on its website has a way of searching for awards, as does NIH. But as a While I'm Here one-stop shop to get an idea of some of the awards that were made, especially if you're in the process of looking at an opportunity, especially for a new to you funding source, it is good. I just wouldn't assume that everybody is going to be there and that every award is going to be acknowledged. But that is Pivot. Spend some time on it. One of the things I have noticed, and maybe just advisor here, is just my main search. They know me as an advisor. And then the curated opportunities is back from the days when I was the administrator of Pivot. So that is, I want you to be aware that I didn't really dive into them because they're not going to be relevant to you. But the saved searches, I can always go into my saved searches and edit the options. If I did want to kind of keep up with the deadlines, I can absolutely do that. That is Pivot. Like I said, recommend spending some time. I call it playing because I have a good time just kind of playing in a database and seeing what I can find out. But as a general rule, if you have spent 30 minutes on Pivot and have found nothing, and by nothing, I don't mean like I don't see anything that's due in the next 6 weeks. So I mean nothing like really nothing. Go ahead and reach out to me, and I'm happy to work with you about why it is that may be happening. Sometimes it is that the search is too broad, or I'm sorry, that sometimes the keywords that you're using are too narrow and that we need to broaden it up. But 30 minutes, if you haven't found something's going on, and you probably just need somebody to give you a hand. But absolutely take the time and claim your profile, see how that is put together, see how advanced it is, and from there you can, I've got a minute. I'm going to show you your profile. No, this is my dean, Juan Gonzalez. So you can see, okay, where are they pulling from? That was probably the first question you had. This is his personal website. You can see it's from UT Dallas. So the only information that they're getting is from UT Dallas that's publicly available. Based on that, they have information on his area of expertise, his affiliation, communities, the keywords that they've associated with him. And then over here, they've got funding opportunities, not just for him, but for his department, which again, can be handy, especially if you're kind of stuck on your searches. But I don't want to speak for Dean Gonzalez. I don't know how many searches he has, but I know that he does look at his weekly pivot email based on just based on experience. So he's probably got some of his own searches as well as looking at what Pivot has assigned to him, which is what I recommend to do. Have some searches that make sense to you, that are what you want to do, but then also kind of as a backdrop, let Pivot kind of see what it can find for you too. Take advantage of all the options out there. Speaking of all the options out there, I'm going to thank you so much for listening to me and spending time with me on Pivot, but I'm going to turn it over to Emily Lacy, who is going to talk about other sources, other ways of finding funding that do not include Pivot. So Emily, over to you, my friend.
Thank you, Beth. So yes, as Beth was saying there, Pivot is the best option simply because it is the one-stop shop. It has everything in there. It's updated regularly, and it has all the way from international to federal to state to corporate to foundations. It has everything in there. And so that would be the easiest option. But you can always go to the actual agency websites. You can go to the foundation websites and you can look up the information. What I will say is that Pivot does the same thing, and it will pretty much update within 24 hours of an agency update or a sponsor update. And so then you'll get the emails like Beth showed where it says, hey, this opportunity has been updated if you were tracking it. So it's easier to go through Pivot because that's where the information already is, and you might find something that would be beneficial that you wouldn't know about if you were just searching on one agency website. The other option you have is you can go to grants.gov, which this is for all the federal agencies. So all federal agencies put all of their solicitations into grants.gov. And so it is a one-stop shop for federal funding, but it is very difficult to search because it is the government, and therefore it is not exactly easy to maneuver. And all of these opportunities are also in Pivot, and so you will probably have an easier time searching in Pivot for what you're actually looking for rather than trying to maneuver around in grants.gov. Now, the other opportunity that I wanted to show you is our OR portal, and I will share my screen so that you can see it. So this is the OR portal, and this was created by the Office of Research to house some of our databases that we were using. And so we have the funding opportunities, we have some of the IRB, and we have the conflict of interest. If you've ever submitted a proposal through my office, or if you have any outside consulting or anything like that, you're probably familiar with this, and you probably submitted through the conflict of interest. What we're going to focus on today is the funding opportunities portal, which is this one right here. Now you can see that there's a menu down here, which is also the exact same as the menu up at the top. So what we'll do is we'll first click on all. So what is the portal? The portal is where we are putting any opportunities that are either their seed grants, which are internally funded, or they're limited submissions, or they are ones that we have a wide mix of faculty who are interested in them, or they're opportunities that we have submitted to in the past. It also is, we sometimes get targeted emails strictly to the central office email in sponsor projects, and it will be industry saying, hey, we have this award, it's specifically for this topic, please forward to interested parties. And I will forward them to everyone if it's a broad topic, but if it's more targeted, it's a little harder to figure out who exactly needs it. We will try and find the right party that would be interested in submitting, but we'll also put it in this portal. And that way it's not just going into our central email and disappearing. We are giving it the opportunity to have life by people who are out there searching. So those will be in here as well. And anything that we can identify where we think that there might be people at UT Dallas who maybe haven't heard of this opportunity, we'll put it in the portal. So I wanted to show you a couple of ways that you can filter in here. So you can first filter by type or by audience. And so right now we just have it as all. So everything is underneath here. And as you can see, it has the sponsor, it has the external link, which will take you directly to the sponsor website. We have the deadline, and like Pivot, we also have ones that will say anticipated deadlines in case we don't know when it's going to come up, but we want you to be aware that this program does exist and it may be coming up at this time in the future. Then we have the award info and a description of the project. And then if you click on this button, it takes you to a more friendly version with lots more words, if there are any. So the other option that you have on filtering them is you can filter it based on the deadline. So you have ones with external deadlines only, which is like this, or you can have open ones. So open is just they don't have a deadline. You can submit at any point in time. Some of the NSF solicitations have taken this approach, and they found that there are actually less proposals submitted when you don't have a deadline, because we as humans naturally procrastinate. So if you don't give us a deadline, we don't ever do anything. And so that is what the open means, is that it's always open. You could submit whenever you want to, and when they get enough proposals, then they'll submit it for review. The other opportunities are limited submissions. So Beth kind of touched on this. So a limited submission is something that the sponsor has limited the amount of proposals that we as the university can submit. Now, this is not a deadline for or limited for faculty. If it's a limit on faculty, we trust that the faculty know how many proposals they're going to be on, and they will make sure that they meet that limit. But this is for submissions from the actual university. And so in this case, we have to have an internal deadline as well as a sponsor deadline. And so the internal deadline will generally be about 6 weeks prior to the actual external deadline. And so in this case, for limited submissions, the faculty will submit a letter of intent stating, who they are, who their team is, what they are going to be doing with the project, and why they think it's a good fit. And then we send it off to a peer review, and they determine which of the applicants would basically have the best shot at getting the money and be the best from UTD and the best to bring recognition to UTD. And those would be the ones that would be selected to go forward. And so we do have some limited submissions that have an open deadline. I think the Meadows Foundation is the only one right now. They accept solicitations all year, or proposals all year round, but they only allow us to submit one within a 12-month period. And so this is one where it's open, but we also have to work in conjunction with our corporate and foundation relations group. We work together with them on any of the projects that are to a foundation. We will work with them to determine which office would be best able to handle it. Since they are specifically for foundations, they know more about how to talk to the foundations, how to write them, the proper stewardship, because foundations are more of a relationship-driven environment than sponsored projects, and especially the federal government. Foundations, it's more who you know and how you're going to benefit society. And so we work closely with that group in order to determine which group can handle it. And if we have to have a limited submission, we will work together to figure out which ones should proceed for the university. The other option is internal funding. So right now we do not have any seed grants that are accepting proposals. The money for the seed grants comes from our NRUF funding, and right now we don't know exactly how much money we will have for the seed grants, but pending the availability of funding, we will have another competition in the spring. And so this is where those opportunities will be listed. And it follows the exact same pattern as the limited submissions, where you would submit your proposal and then it would go to peer review and we would award them. So the other option is you could filter by the audience. So a lot of the times we have specific groups of people who are looking for things. Like right now, this opportunity is for faculty. If we limited it to young investigators, it would hit the ones that the solicitation has a eligibility requirement of either a rank of assistant professor or someone who is a certain amount of years past their PhD. This can sometimes be just postdocs as well. And so we do try hard to put more opportunities in here for young investigators, because we know that you don't have as much of the connections as more established faculty, and you're kind of putting out lots of fish hooks and seeing who bites. And so we try and put as many opportunities in here for young investigators as we can to try and give you the best opportunities and the most opportunities. There is one down here that had both. Let me see. Yeah. So this one, we've labeled it for faculty and young investigators. So sometimes you'll see it with multiple ones on there. There's also, you can filter it if you're a grad student. You can filter based on the grad student opportunities, and it's nice and orange. And then there's postdocs as well. So there's many varieties that are in there. When you have the limited submission, I didn't display. Oh, there we go. Now we see them all. So if you have a limited submission that you wanted to apply for, there would be an apply button that would appear. Let's scroll down to one that's not already passed. Right here is an apply. So if you wanted to apply for the YSTEM Scholars Award, you could hit the apply, and that's where you would submit your LOI. And as you'll notice, it's listed for the young investigators. And so that is pretty much the OR portal. It's fairly simple. You can also type up here. It is a smart picker, so you could even put just NSF and it would come up with things, or you could put National Science Foundation, any of those, and it searches pretty much everything. It searches the title, it searches the award info, the description, it searches everywhere. And so that would be one way that you could limit your search, and you can export it to Excel or to PDF or any other option that's available there. So that pretty much sums up the OR portal. The only other thing I wanted to mention is that, like I said, we do work closely with the Corporate and Foundation Relations group. And so if you have a submission and you aren't sure which group it should go to, like National Science Foundation is technically a foundation, should that go to the foundation group? You can call us first, and then we will work with the Foundation Relations group to figure out which one is most appropriate. And yes, NSF should all go through my group, because NSF has a lot of rules. The more rules they have, the more they have to go through us. But if it's, and especially with the foundations, there are some that require that we already have relationships with, or that might be on the list of the president's top priorities. And so we want to make sure that we are aware of what's going into each foundation, because some of them will allow you to submit on your own, and we just want to be aware of what's there so that we don't send multiple things when we're not supposed to. But we work together to figure that out. So I think that's all we had to say. So I will turn it over to any questions.
We do have one that we just received. I'll open it up to both of you. Can you please give me the definition of young investigators? Does it ever differ by funding opportunity?
Yes. Yes, it does. For our purposes, young investigators, anyone who's an assistant professor or less. So that would be, I'm not inferring that they're less is less, but if they are a postdoc even would be considered a young investigator. It's generally anybody who has their PhD and they are not to the associate professor level. Once you reach the associate professor level, you are pretty much blanked out of some funding opportunities because you have shown that you have moved on. But some of them, it differs. Some will say that you have to be within 5 years of getting your PhD. Others will say you have to be within 10 years. And so it just will depend upon what the specific requirements are. There's a wide range, and I mean it varies across the board, but what we generally mean when we say young investigator is someone who is either postdocs or assistant professors.
And Beth, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I mean, what Emily is spot on accurate. I mean, you know, the National Institutes of Health, for example, basically you're an early stage investigator if you've not completely competed for one of a certain list of grants and had a PhD for less than 10 years. But again, Pivot thinks of early stage investigator as a PhD less than 5 years. So yes, it's one of those terms that should have a very nice set back definition, and it just really doesn't.
Great.
And I did want to say that Beth touched on one point when she was showing Pivot, that if you're interested in a specific agency or a specific foundation, you can look at their website and they will pretty much, most all of them will show you their previous awards, which is very, very important because that will show you what they're looking for, and it will show you the amount of money too that they have and what they give, and whether they seem to only give to one region or one type of school, like it has to be a medical school. And it just gives you more of information that will lessen the amount of time you're spent just submitting a proposal that may never go anywhere. Especially with NIH and NSF, they have their the NIH reporter and the NSF award search. They are very good. You can narrow them down very much. It's like Pivot, where you can include and exclude, and you can say exactly what you need, and you get to see abstracts as well, which gives you even more of an idea. And I mean, you can always reach out to the program officers and the the contacts and just ask them, especially if it's a program that you may have missed. You just found out about it and the deadline was 2 months ago. You can contact them and see if they'll have it open again. Most of them are cyclical, especially with foundations. It's pretty much same time every year. But you can always ask if they plan on having the program again.
Great.
There's the website for award.
And I think that's pretty much time for the live session. Thank you, Beth and Emily, for so generously sharing your time and knowledge with us. I also encourage you to join us in 2 weeks from today on how to write your NIH progress report on September 25th. Please see the announcement also in the Q&A chat for the link to register and to view the complete Research 101 series schedule. We do have 4 more sessions. Have a great afternoon, everyone, and hope to see you over in the Extra Mile session. Thanks.